Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today to discuss Workspace templates. There are a few templates that we create for Relativity that are available for people, and I don't think they realize that they exist. And so today we're just going to talk about what those templates are and how you can utilize them. So my name is Greg Houston. I'm part of the solutions team here at Kcura. I've created the original Kcura starter template way back in the day, many years ago. I think version 7.2 maybe, or even before that. And then it has gone to a few different hands, and now I'm back at it. So I'm going to kind of walk you through what the Workspace template that we have currently available setup is and kind of guide you through that. Hopefully you can hear me. If you cannot, please let me know. Otherwise, I will proceed with this. So what's available in the template? What are available templates? We're going to talk about what there is currently. I break things down between the on-prem and Relativity 1. It's basically the same, but there's a little bit of differentiation there. It's really just naming. It's not necessarily with regards to the content. We will predominantly be talking about the Quick Start template, what applications it has, the fields, the tabs, why did we load certain things where they were, considerations, the searches, the views, the layouts, and then any profiles. And then question and answer at the end, but I really do encourage people to ask questions throughout. Hit me with questions as we're on the topic, because I think it seems a lot more appropriate than hitting everything at the end. But by all means, if there's stuff at the end you want to talk about, let me know. So the Relativity 1 templates and the on-premise templates are, first of all, there's really just a basic template. The template that is meant to be the cleanest, most pure kind of template. It doesn't have fields. It doesn't have any applications loaded. It does have basic fields. So we start off with an extracted text field and some basic system fields, and that is the base template or the new case template, depending upon where you are. Then we have the Quick Start template. And that template is available for either on-prem or for Relativity 1. If you have Relativity 1, we're not going to update it every time there's a new release automatically, but it is available to ARM into your Relativity 1 environment. Same thing with on-prem. If you install an on-prem instance right now, you're going to get something called the Relativity Starter template. The Relativity Starter template is really just a very older, basic template that was created I don't know how many versions ago, and we've taken that, and essentially the Quick Start template is an updated version of that. I would recommend everybody, if you want to get the latest and greatest template, get the Quick Start template. It is available on the community site. If you don't have access to the community site, talk to support. It's available on the community site, and I think it's under Relativity Files is the folder that it's under. So look under Relativity Files. If you have questions about getting to that template, feel free to email solutions or email support. Either one can assist you with getting to it. And then what happens is we have an ARM available of the Quick Start, and the Quick Start is then what allows you to basically, that ARM is what we bring in, and that will have what you will see today. We update that Quick Start. The goal now going forward is to update that quarterly. We will update both the template and the documentation on a quarterly basis and have that available for anybody to download. If you're making your own template, we understand. You probably don't want our Quick Start necessarily, but if you've already got stuff going. But nonetheless, if you're starting out and you're kind of trying to be fresh and new with what is the most effective template, Quick Start is probably your best way to go. That's the idea. So here's the file and libraries. It's under Relativity Applications, is where the library is that it's underneath of the community site. So there you go. If you have any kind of question about how to get there, your login should get you to the file Relativity Applications folder. If not, it's a permissions thing most likely. And I would talk to support to get your permissions updated. So one of the main things that the template is going to offer you immediately, and I'm going to go through some slides here first probably like 2 or 3 more slides, and then I'm actually going to jump into the environment where we host that. So I've created our internal, we have an internal environment that's available that I build this on, or that not necessarily I build on, but all the group that is associated with this template work in to update based upon new features in Relativity. So one of the examples is when a new field gets added for processing, we're going to go ahead and make sure that we create that field. We're going to map that field, and we are going to go ahead and essentially as best we can. Now there are situations where there's some features that we can't really make much around them or build much around them to make sure that they're available. But if there's a feature that we can add as part of the template, we are going to add it in that template, update it quarterly, update the documentation that goes with it, and make that available on the community site. So what do you get with that Relativity Quick Start Template? The first thing, like I said, started to show you here, is the mapped fields. With relativity processing becoming really an integral part of the tool, we are making the assumption that everybody should have relativity processing. Even if you don't use it for every matter, you can use it for, I would say, hopefully the majority of them. If you don't want to use relativity processing, then I would suggest going back to the new case template and installing analytics, at least if you want, or creating a few fields that are your coding fields. Once you create your template, I mean, going forward, there's no reason to always come back to the quick start. But what I would say that you should probably consider is looking at what the updates are. And by looking at what the updates are, you can update your own template accordingly as necessary. So you would see what were the new mapped fields, if there's any other new features that are useful and created. And so that documentation page with the template information will actually have all the updates, etc. This template is available for the last version of 9.5 and up. So if you have something, if you're on like a 9.4 or an older 9.5 environment, this template's not going to be available for you. I'm sorry, but we established the cutoff to be the latest 9.5, and we actually might, if you need an older version, there might be one stashed away in an archive, but really going forward, we are trying to move that forward from 9.5, the last 9.5 going up, and then you'll see a quarterly update from there. The documentation, if you just go into documentationhelp.relativity.com and look for Quick Start, you should get directed to the Quick Start template documentation. That documentation will actually probably expand very soon to more of a user guide that will kind of be based upon what we talk about today. But right now it's more about what's in the views, what's the security, that type of thing. With regards to the map fields, back to the slide, sorry, I keep getting distracted. We have 129 fields that are mapped. There are a few fields that we've pulled through for the template that aren't necessarily automatically available with regards to processing just out of the box. There's just a couple that we've added. For the most part, though, they're all available. We've created all the fields. We've created fields based on the choices, field types that we think are most appropriate and will match up to processing, size-wise and everything combined. So hopefully if you were to run processing, you would have a pretty good experience based upon the fields being mapped and everything being appropriate for what you need. We also have basic coding fields. So we've included a responsiveness field with choices. We've included a privilege field and privilege description, and then a comments field. So we've kept it pretty basic. Actually, there's an issue coding field as well with one issue hot. I'm sorry, that wasn't on the slides. Forgot about that one. So from an extra field standpoint, we've really minimized. We're very cautious and conscientious about people don't want bulk, they don't want extra, but if you install all the processing fields, you install application or analytics, you create a analytics set. By the time you do all that, you're talking about 300 fields, 305 I think to be exact. And that's probably as small as you're going to get with Relativity, including these basic coding fields. So just a side note in case you're wondering. From a standpoint of what's included, why did we include certain things, and I'm going to talk about this in more detail when I show you in the actual application, actual relativity tool. We've put in all the basic applications that we think most users use. That includes processing. That includes all the analytics functionality. That does not include Fact Manager or Case Dynamics as it's going to be called. It does not include certain custom applications that come from third parties or any scripts. So we've really tried to minimize any extras, but at the same time provide you with the majority of things that are considered part of the actual main app. From a tab standpoint, this is the biggest thing that I hear people complain about, or I've heard there's so many different opinions about tabs and how they should be organized. We've created, based upon more security standpoint than anything else, and I'll show you in just a moment how we go from left to right with that. With views, I think the views are pretty standard or pretty typical of what a lot of people would utilize, but I'm not going to say that it's every view you'll ever need. You definitely can see people creating more views and definitely creating more layouts. The layouts are pretty basic, and they are, we've included more fields than we have not, from the standpoint that it's a lot easier just to click the X and remove stuff than it is to drag and keep moving stuff around. Even though the new layout builder is pretty easy to use, just scanning through the fields and trying to get to all the different fields and move them on, it's easier just to drop stuff off than to add it still. We've gone ahead and created profiles for analytics and for processing, OCR and imaging, with the idea being that here's some basic profiles that we think people will be useful for people to use on a regular basis, but I'm not going to say that it's going to be perfect for everyone. There's definitely going to be a need for new profiles possibly. And then with regards to permissions, I'll talk through that in just a moment and show you more about what permissions we've created. Okay, so let me jump back out to the actual application. So you'll see here we've actually got an instance of Relativity running. This is an older, I don't think it's the latest and greatest. We kind of stay behind a little bit so that we can provide a version that's a little bit more user-friendly, because I know our clients are not all on the latest and greatest immediately. So we have the new case template. The new case template, as I stated before, is meant to be very basic. When I say basic, I'm talking about really minimal. We don't have processing installed. We don't have analytics installed. When you look at fields from a field standpoint, we don't have any scripts. Let me go back, Workspace admin. From a field standpoint, it's just the basic system fields that are available here. Nothing beyond that. So if we look at actually, yeah, the non-system document fields, you can see here there's only, in this situation, 21 fields. So we've tried to keep it really basic and minimal. And this is probably your cleanest option if you're trying to do a new template from scratch. Now, in order to assist you, we've created a Relativity Quick Start Template. We have a Relativity 1 version and a on-prem version. Ultimately, though, those are the same. We've created the two different ones just from our standpoint of trying to, you know, there's some scripts that are involved with Relativity 1 that are not necessary for on-prem and whatnot. So, what's in the Quick Start Template? And I see I have some questions here. Just a second. These are just questions around logging in, so I will skip past these right now. So we start off with obviously the Documents tab at the far left. That's pretty straightforward. From there, let's look at the browser. We've got an O1 processing folder created, assuming that you'll be processing into that. We had to create a base level folder for processing, so we just created the O1 to move it to the top so that it stays visible. If you would like to secure that or you'd like to change that, by all means you can do so. But right now it is not secured and it is pretty straightforwardly just available for processing. We've decided to include responsive and privilege fields on the field tree, and then we've got a lot of system fields available as well, and confidential, I should say. And the rest of these are all system type fields. Now, the biggest change that you'll recognize in some of the later templates is about searching. So everything in Relativity uses a search. It's pretty standard that if you want to run processing, you want to run OCR, not so much processing, I guess. If you want to run OCR, if you want to run imaging, productions, everything bases itself off of a safe search of some sort. With regards to processing, we do have some, that's why I said processing error search, just so that you can jump to some errors that came into the document object from publishing. So items to be aware of there. With regards to indexing and structure and analytics, searches that would be useful, we break down what the searches are in the documentation. The searches are really about, many of these are just about having text available. With DT search, we want to make sure that we display the extracted text field only. With the analytics set, that's another one, we want to maybe just display the extracted text. With email threading, do you want just the parent emails, near duplicate analysis? Some of this is based on older ideas, but kind of the same breakdown of how things are shown. We also have a search here to show you which documents are not going to be included in analytics based on the fact that they are missing text or text that's greater than 30. So just be aware that we are looking at kind of the different things that might be around for. We've got a question here to look at what's in the actual processing errors. I'll give you an edit there so you can see what the conditions are. So basically processing errors is set. Pretty straightforward. One of the newer ones though, one of the things that's kind of happened more recently is the quick find. There are some people that have requested being able to jump quickly to essentially different, these could be views as well, but how do I get to look at certain items by custodian? So I want to see it sorted by custodian or by file type, language. You can see the different items here. And so really what these are is saved searches that are created, pulling back documents that have a sender domain, sorted by sender domain, and a few other fields that might be useful around that. So you can jump to those individual items pretty quickly, and if you wanted to, you could filter on them as well. Okay, from there, we've got our cluster browser, but that doesn't really, to be honest, there's not much that we need to look at there, nothing that's been done for the template purpose. So understanding the tabs across the top as we proceed right, we've kind of tried to break it out by what is the order of things to build out your workspace? How do you proceed with creating things? In the past, we kind of done it by a security standpoint, but now we're kind of working through what's the next step, so to say. So after, documents is far left because that's where we default to. What do you want people to jump into immediately? And it's always going to be documents. From there, if you wanted to start building out your workspace, workspace details is important from a security standpoint. Search indexes obviously are the next thing to make sure that data is searchable. And then these other options are kind of available from a standpoint of building out workspace specific things. Okay, from here, I would say the only thing that we need to really dive into and maybe talk about as we move across is the workspace details, and that would be the permissions. Our permissions, nothing's really changed much with that over the course of time. We have 3 levels of permissions. I think of level 1 as being a reviewer. This is a person that needs to come in, look at a few documents real quick, maybe look at a saved search, and jump back out. They're not going to be doing a lot of editing. They might not be able to do editing at all. Currently they do have access to edit at least, but they're just a really basic user. Level 2 starts to become a little more of a power user based upon the permissions of level 1. They have more access with regards to, and I think of this more like maybe a paralegal or the case manager or an associate attorney, somebody that's actively using a lot of different functionality in the case. Level 2 gets more permissions than level 1, obviously. If you start mixing the two, obviously you'd have the permissions combined from both, but the goal here is that we're trying to give you more around creating batches, creating searches, possibly adding choices to a field, maybe even adding fields. That's up to you if you want to edit that. So it's kind of the next level. Then we have level 3. This is probably close to the equivalent of a case administrator. They have access to pretty much everything, all the tabs. They might even have access to tabs on an instance level as well. It's meant to be very high level. Now realize if you have these template groups, the template group is not what you're assigning users to. The template group is what you're copying the permissions from when you actually build your workspace. So the template groups come over, you create a new level 1 group based upon your workspace name, and you copy those permissions over from level 1 here to the level 1 of your individual workspace. That's how these template permissions get used and carried through. And the template review group was really just a test group that I should probably have removed at some point. So without going into all the details of all the different tabs and everything, that's what level 1, 2, and 3. If you're interested in seeing how we've set this up, there is a table in the documentation also that lists all the security permissions. I will say you can search for security permissions or Quick Start Security. It is like the second link and it doesn't automatically say permissions. It's I can't remember what it is offhand, and it'll take you into the permissions. Okay. Next, custodians, not really much there to report. That's more about your processing, review batches, and then we come into processing. So with regards to processing, we've created a profile. Now, the profiles that we've got are basically two. So we don't really mess with the default. We leave the default alone. That kind of stems from the old days of updates being made and upgrades, the default being changed. I think that will actually be resolved soon. I think there's been discussions about why are we not using the default, and so the default will be a useful tool in the future. For right now, we've created two processing profiles, a standard profile and a fast profile. The idea being there are occasions where maybe you just want to be quick and dirty and get data in so you can search it versus sometimes items taking a little bit longer. So let's jump in and take a look at what makes something faster versus the standard. So when we come in here, what we're looking at, there's two main things that are going to make it faster. One is going to be your OCR speed. So we've got, here's your OCR accuracy, highest to lowest, what's the fastest, okay? And then the other key one is, do you want to recreate that folder source structure? That will take longer to execute your data and publish it into the workspace if you go ahead and you do create this folder structure. So the fast one has that turned off. The idea being that we're not going to capture that. We've also created a profile for analytics, with the idea being that we've mapped all the fields. There's one standard analytics profile. We've mapped the fields for email threading. If you want to use those, if they exist and everything's good to go, then you've got all these mapped and you're set based upon what we would consider. So even down here to the unified title, this attachment name field is mapped and processing so that when it comes through in analytics and the structured analytics set, it's all mapped appropriately. So parent document ID, are no, I think back in the day there were a few scripts that you had to run to generate this. The idea being now is if you run processing, all these fields are mapped in processing, then they are already populated here for your index profile, or not your index profile, your analytics profile, and they're available going forward from that standpoint. We have created a DT search index already. It's not active, so you would still need to build it. We've connected it to the DT search save search. Just little things like that that aren't necessarily huge, but hopefully will help people understand, especially if you're new to relativity, maybe understand what are the next steps, a few less clicks in the process. That's really our goal, is just a few less clicks. When we jump through the rest of these, we've got profiles for imaging, OCR. We've actually created a production set. So one of the nicer things in the later production versions is that you can actually copy productions and have it already set up for you. So with the goal being that I can jump in, edit this production really quick to add some data sources to, and here I go, I'm ready to proceed with my production. So we've gone ahead and done that as well. And then let's jump back here and go to our views. So other things that are considered, we've created views, starting with an all documents view, which is pretty straightforward and basic. Everything is included in that. Then batched out documents. How are they batched out? Inclusives, emails. So there's searches that go with that actually can, send to the batch. We're assuming that the batch fields are created, or that populated, I should say, not just created but populated. We've got different types of documents groups based upon some coding fields available, and then we've got our structured analytics set. So the email view is really going to show us what's email threading look like, what's the threaded items, inclusives only, near dupes, and language information. And then we do have a couple of views down here that are more utilitarian with regards to unitization, the production documents, so everything that's been produced that has a Bates number populated, an admin view that you can kind of edit and throw around different things. This is secured, I believe, from level 1. And then processing errors and any technical issues. Just going to check my questions real quick, make sure I have anything. Okay. Next, let's take a look at layouts. So with regards to layouts, some of this is, and this is the type of thing that we want to make people aware of, is that when you go into a review coding layout, so this is the layout we probably imagine most people utilizing as their coding documents. There is a functionality that came around with regards to stacked tabs down here at the bottom, and so we've included at the top here all of the basic coding fields, and what you'll notice down here at the bottom is we've created two different sub-tabs, one with email metadata information and one with document metadata information, and that allows you to see all the information about those documents with as many important fields, or mostly important fields, around that information. So depending upon what you're looking at, you can flip back and forth between those two. The other layouts that are available here, and most of these are just kind of copies of the main review layout, and then they can be swapped out depending upon what you want to do with them. QC review is really the same thing as review coding, except for it has a QC field. Privilege log is a little different, but then the other fields, this document metadata is really just every document in here. Every metadata field available is on this layout, so it's a pretty monster layout actually, but it might be helpful from a standpoint of if you're trying to understand what was available. And we've broken it out as much as possible in the sub-tabs so that you do have some different area of information and not huge, big, long scrolling layout necessarily, and then just general information. Okay. From an application standpoint, really the only application that we've included outside of the basics of processing analytics is the document utilities. Document utilities provide you that unitization function. It also provides a mass operation of updating the folder names and paths. Those are the two big features that come with document unitization. There's nothing much with regards to search term reports, and scripts is somewhat limited. We do have the deduplication workflow scripts all available and a few other standard relativity scripts, but we've not really included a lot of extra scripts necessarily. That's just one of those things that's really hard to keep updated and maintained. Not to say that you couldn't use scripts and do that, but just so you're aware, that's why we didn't do a lot of it. We have actually also created a structured analytics set for each one of the different types that we typically recommend running. Email threading and near dupe. The reason we created this was because the fields. We needed those fields so we could use that for the view. So the idea being that when you come into the email view, you've got all the fields that are created around ENTD, ETND, sorry, I think I said that wrong. And so you've got your inclusiveness and whatnot based upon that. If you want to create your own in your Relativity Workspace and your past version, the last version of 9.5, which was released in December, I don't remember the individual numbers, you can create your own structured analytics set without running it, and it will create these fields, and have these fields will be available then to add to your view, to add to your layout, to have available for the purposes of future workspaces. So from a template standpoint, that's your best option. In the past, if you're on a version earlier than that, we don't really have any options for you, and it's difficult because until you create your structured analytics set for the one that actually has multiple structured analytics set, you're not going to see those different items. I have a few questions here, so let me jump into these. So I've got a few questions with regards to and actually quite a few questions here, so let me kind of go through some of these as I've gotten through majority of the content that I needed to. It's just hard on this little bitty window. Let me move us around. So there's a question, is there any future plan to add search term sets to the template? That people use the same search term sets over and over. It is something that's been talked about, and I've actually recommended or requested it from a standpoint of for privilege purposes, especially. I know that key terms could be useful as well, but I mean, the way that I was selling it before was that if you had a list, a master list of every law firm, which exists, the top AM Law 500, if you had the list of law firms and you could create a search term report that's in all your workspaces and just have it run, there you go, you're all set. So I do think that that's something that will be on the long term. It is not available right now. Somebody learned about stack tabs. That's great. Great to hear from you. Where will we be able to get these? Can you send the link? I think you're talking about the template as a whole. The template as a whole, and I'll go into it right here at the end after I answer all the questions, is available on the community site. Go to Relativity Applications folder, and you'll have that available for you to download. It's an ARM file, so you'll need to install ARM on your instance, and once you install ARM, you can ARM that workspace in. It does require that you're on a version, the December 9.5 version or later. We've got a question about what is the field usage value on the document object for this template. It is large, and it is larger than we have expected you to create in the past. That number that we used to put on the certification for admin and also teach in admin training, we don't really do that anymore. The reality is that we've figured out that one, I think there's more server resources, and two, the reality is that you're not really utilizing that data all the time, so therefore, all that space all the time, so we've kind of realized that it's not as big a deal, and really, honestly, at the end of the day, there's no way around it. If we see that there's a lot of extra fields created, it might be something beneficial to try to remove some fixed link text fields, but really there's not much you can do with that. I will just show you real quick. From a field standpoint, we've created a couple of, there's a couple of tabs here, not tabs, views that are probably useful. The processing map fields, so which fields are mapped for processing, and then next is the, oh, where did it go? Template fields, and then text fields. So just be aware that there are a significant number of these, some of these are system fields. Some of these, so those don't really count against you. It's the fixed link text fields that you have to be aware of, and really from there, I also can say that between data grid, depending upon how, if you have data grid and whatnot, that changes things as well. I've also helped people, and I think something that's going to be added soon is the fields that are not part of processing. People wanted to see what was not a mapped processing field so that they could understand what were the fields that were left after because processing fields are pretty important. What you find is there's about 300 fields total, so let's look at all non-system document fields. So about 285. Out of those 285, 128 are for processing. You've got about 10 for structured analytics set, another 5 or 6 for basic coding, and then you've got a significant number for errors to hold for analytics, and you've got production bag and baits. So by the time you all that, it's really not an extreme number, and it's not something that's probably outside of the norm. So we have a question here. To maintain client-specific layouts and searches, would you recommend using an app to deploy for those clients, or rather have a template workspace for them? So I would probably say an app is a really good thing to push out safe searches and some views. Here's the only downfall. From a standpoint of, in the past, we actually went down that road of saying, well, here's an app, and you install this app, and it'll bring over the views and the layouts. And the problem with that at this point is that then it attaches to the application, and it's nice from a standpoint is, okay, then I want to update one save search. It allows you to then update that one save search in your app. You push the app out to all the other workspaces, and it's really easy, and it works really well. So in some situations, that probably could be very effective and great. From a standpoint of, there's a little bit of frustration that I think comes with the fact that once something is part of an app, it's not editable. And so with that in mind, you need to probably unlock the app, or if you're trying to lock stuff down and keep minimal edits, maybe an app's the right way to go, just because you get that advantage as well that people can't edit stuff. Even if they have rights to edit a field, if it's part of an app, it's going to lock them down because the app is locked. And that could be very beneficial for some situations. From an administrator, though, it might be very frustrating that you go to edit a safe search and you can't do anything with it because that safe search is part of the app. So those are the two sides to that coin, and I'm not going to say which one I would recommend, but I could see advantages to both. One of the questions we have is, can you add secured folders in the templates? Absolutely. Because of the fact that you've got your secured You could secure any of these folders. We don't have a bunch of folders by any means. You could secure save searches. You could secure the folders. We've got the template users, template permissions groups, I should say, sorry. With the template permissions groups, you can add all the security you want, and that will come over anytime you add it to a new workspace. So that is pretty nice to be able to have instance, not instance level, object level security, and definitely you can use that to carry over. Let's see what other questions here. One of the questions here is do you see any benefit for those who don't use relativity processing and analytics? That is a great question. I would say that probably if you don't use analytics or processing, these templates, yeah, probably not a big help, not necessarily. The only thing that I can say that would be beneficial is maybe to create the save searches are maybe useful, because that's useful regardless, but it maybe not the save searches. Some of these might be useful, but not all of them. So the two things that if you're not using relativity analytics or processing would be the save searches, and the other thing would be the production, to create a production that could be useful for your template. Beyond that, I don't see a lot of need for it, probably. But those could be very useful. I mean, and the key thing I think that take away from, I know some people are like, well, I create my productions all the time. I don't need to deal with that. It's really about, the whole idea of a template some ways is about standardization and creating a guide so that everything's done the same way on a regular basis so that you have that consistency and hopefully reduce the number of errors. I think at the end of the day, that's what it's all coming down to. It's the security errors. So, you know, when you set up your security, how many times has somebody accidentally seen something they probably shouldn't have or has access to something they shouldn't have? If you can set up your, so security is another one they add to that list that I didn't say. So security and productions, and then productions. Productions are a huge deal, and productions done incorrectly can be really nasty. And so if you can kind of standardize the save searches that are executed to do your QC checks, the production setup for your process, and have that carried over, I don't know, I think there's a possibility there to reduce errors and kind of streamline that process a little bit. I'm getting a lot of people that's saying that they can't find the app, so I will jump there in just a second. Can a default DT search index and corresponding search be in the template? Yes, they can be. One thing I will point out, if you are using an index and you hide your keyword search index, I know a lot of people don't like the keyword search index and they hide it. They secure it. If you secure this so that it's not visible and then you go to create a new save search, what you'll need to make sure you do in your drop downs here is to reverse the order so that your DT search is at the top and above your keyword search, so that keyword search is not the first one visible, because then when you go to create your save searches, it's going to give you an error that it can't find the keyword index or something. I don't know what the error is exactly, but something along those lines. And it's because it's looking for keyword first. So if you just flip that order on your indexes, you should be better off with that. Okay. Is the stack tab layout option only available in the December install, or can use that on the earlier version? It is an earlier version of 9.5. Like I said, we don't have templates created for you in earlier versions of 9.5, but if you wanted to add that stacked layout piece, you could definitely create it on your own template in an earlier version. I think that was released mid-year last year. I would have to look it up. I used to do pretty good about memorizing on a bit. I've been here too long to remember all that stuff now. Can you configure the field edits tracker for the templates? The field edits tracker, is that an application? I'm not sure if you're talking about the reviewer edits. That one is problematic. So with regards to scripts and other applications, we have pulled them out. So Fact Manager, as much as I love to promote Fact Manager, or Case Dynamics as it's being known soon, it does not carry over well with the templates. Case Metrics is currently a instance level application, but will soon be a workspace level application as well. When that happens, I still will not include it with the template, just from the standpoint that it gets updated on a pretty regular basis, and if it gets behind a version, it could be problematic and it doesn't work very well. So we've kind of eliminated, from the standpoint, we're trying to also eliminate as much. We want to try to ease your process as much as possible. And we have tested certain things, and Fact Manager, unfortunately, does not carry over well with templates. That script that you're mentioning does not carry over well with templates. So we're very limited on, I wouldn't carry over a lot of the scripts that require some of those scripts as well. I'd be very careful with that. Yeah, another question, you have production placeholders are part of the template as well, and I believe they are. Honestly, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to look here real quick because I feel like we have created a production. Yes, placeholders can be created as well and brought over in the template. So we've created those as well. And just to kind of let you know, cannot provide search provider as the error name. That's what people are talking. That's the error I was looking for. Just so you know that there is a group here that is, every time a new set of features come out, once a quarter, we will assemble here. We are looking to find what we think would be appropriate to update in this template going forward, and we will then bring those functions into it. It'll be updated on our website, and you'll be able to get to that from there. So let me come into, we're almost at the end of our hour. It's flown by. And let me come into our community site. Why am I not getting that? There we go. I don't come into community enough to know where I'm at here. Community site. So training center, community site. Log in. If you're not seeing what I'm seeing or getting to where I need to see, and you won't see this because I'm an employee, so I have to go in a little bit differently. And now it should recognize me, so you'll see my name up here at the top, my pretty little face. Come into Files, and then you'll have your libraries, and it should be right here in the very first Relativity Applications. And the part that I think screws most people up is that I'm going to do my webinar piece here is in my way. Just a second here. Let me move it out. Oi. Okay. I'm going to change the display from icons to titles, or table, sorry. Table. And then the other key with it is, it's way down, and that's making me view more. That's the biggest thing that people don't get. Ooh, there it was. I don't know why it just bounced back. Relativity Quick Start Template, and then here you go. It was last updated 4/18. So that's the template. You'll see probably a new one come along here before too long. I think the naming will probably change with the version of Relativity that we're at. I think we're going to try to change that. But other than that, you can also see kind of where we are. Okay, let me see if we have more questions. I think we've gotten through most everything. Okay. So that's our webinar today. You guys are set. If there's any more questions, I'll hang on here for another few moments and hopefully answer them. And if anything else comes up in the future, you have questions about the template, feel free to email me, greg.houston@relativity.com, or email solutions@relativity.com. We'll be happy to answer them. And hopefully the template is useful for you. Like I said, we'll have some more work building out the documentation. My long-term goal is to have a really nice document that somebody could come into Relativity, never using the tool before, and read that from a lit support, just to learn lit support and to be familiar with things. I would love to be able to have this guide that would be available with some sample data that somebody could learn how to use the tool effectively from just learning using the template and see a nice process. Okay, thanks everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. If it's as sunny and wonderful as it is here in Chicago, summer is finally here. Enjoy it. Bye.